Julie.
So for more on this, let's bring in retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood, Senior Research Fellow for Defense Programs at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Sure.
Does the president pose a risk of empowering the Kremlin if he continues to undermine NATO, as according to one expert who's saying that?
Yeah, one, he's not undermining NATO, and what he's doing is calling them out for their pattern of spending, not just in the last 6 months or 18 months, but the last 25 years. So they've had a dramatic reduction in the expenditures in their own security, which certainly benefits us in this collective security arrangement since the end of the Cold War. So he's not undermining anything.
Right.
I think he's bringing it out onto the table.
Yeah.
In terms of emboldening Putin, I don't think Putin needs anybody to embolden him. He kind of does what he wants. You know, he seizes territory, he invades countries like Ukraine. He has saved Bashar al-Assad's regime. So I don't know that he's really looking to President Trump to vindicate or validate or justify anything that he's already doing.
Right. Yeah. And I think some critics are maybe critical because of his establishment approach. He has a non-conditional and not typical approach to diplomacy, but so far it has worked. What do you make, by the way, of President Trump's harsh blast at NATO during a rally last night in Montana? He portrayed the alliance as one-sided, transactional, and bad for the U.S.
Well, the United States security guarantees, nuclear and in other areas, have really enabled Europe, a lot of European countries, to make extraordinary investments in social programs, social safety net, government subsidies for various programs and all, because they haven't really had to be concerned about what used to be the Soviet Union and certainly now is Russia. But it's amazing how history catches up with one. And so though they are making this case that they are starting to spend more and that many of them are on track to hit a 2% goal in the years ahead, they're having to make good on 25 years of underinvestment. I mean, West Germany had 5,000 tanks at the end of the Cold War. They're now down to about 270.
Yeah.
No deployable submarines. The British military is going through its own review. So they've got a lot of ground to make up for,
Right.
and I think the president is just saying that plainly.
What's key at this NATO summit is the president's willingness to challenge the status quo.
Yes.
And I want to talk to you about the status quo because, as you know, it's not working. It's resulted in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's resulted in a nuclear-armed North Korea. It's resulted in nuclear arms in Iran and supporting Syria and Hezbollah, which is a threat to the state of Israel. I mean, the list goes on. How will the president's non-traditional approach get European allies to recognize the status quo is just a no-go?
Well, you're challenging a lot of these baked-in presumptions about how things should be handled. So, I mean, to your point, there's this way of going about things that is valued by the diplomatic foreign policy establishment, and certainly here in Washington, D.C., and in other capitals. And when you challenge that, it creates a lot of friction, a lot of volatility, because you're questioning the effectiveness of these long-term diplomats and political figures, and basically saying you have been ineffective, if not absolutely harmful, over the past 20 years or so. And people are going to take offense to that, right? So anytime you're a dissenter, you question what has been received wisdom, a core fundamental principle, the solidarity of NATO, people will bristle and they're going to push back. So I think we will see some of that coming out of this NATO meeting, and we'll just have to see whether it really wakes them up. I
mean, that is why this president was elected. People didn't want to elect just another politician, and that is what he's doing. He's not acting as a politician, and maybe it's time for less politics and more action. But that, nonetheless, is all the time we have. Retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hey, by the